Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Pathways to Excellence. It's my absolute pleasure today to welcome one of Malaysia's bright and shining stars, Mr. Joyton Fu. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Joyton is a current student at the National University of Singapore, at NUS, if I'm not wrong. And you're studying chemistry, right?
Yeah, I'm studying chemistry.
I mean, like, you know, your LinkedIn profile literally says right here, only Joyton Fu, a student who intends to pursue a career in chemistry.
Yeah, that was what I put back then. Back then, when I was still not in NUS.
When you were still not in
Yeah.
US. Wow, okay. So, I mean, like, I'm trying to imagine right now, but like, you've just won an international competition.
Yeah.
Eating out, like, how many participants were there even, like, in the ICHO?
I think it's roughly 200 plus.
100 plus?
Yeah,
200 plus?
Yep.
How many people were there even in, like, the Malaysia selections when you were doing the ICHO?
Okay, I think the question here is definitely very interesting because the selection this year went horribly wrong. Because last year, in 2022, the selection is actually conducted in 3 different stages. So like there's phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 selection. Okay. But in this year, there's completely no selection.
No selection?
Yes, no selection. And the only way that they get to select us is there's actually one phase of selection conducted by UM around this year's January. And after that, UM just sort of like abandoned us, if you can say that. Yeah. So what they did was that they gave up the training program entirely to the Ministry of Education Malaysia in the hope that the ministry could actually find some kind of replacement, you know, of training and, you know, practical trainings and theoretical training for us. But the Ministry of Education failed to do so. So what they did eventually was that they actually selected top 4 students that got the best result in the first stage of selection. Yeah, so that's actually one stage of selection. But I wouldn't consider that as a training because it's just giving you the questions and you do it yourself.
I see.
And prior to that, they only released like a few lecture videos. It's not even live, there's no physical interactions or what.
I am sorry to hear that. Okay, wow.
Yeah, so that's what actually happened this year.
If I recall correctly, so you managed to get, if I'm not wrong, like the top scorer award for the K3M, right?
Yes.
Like in 2022.
Yes.
So I think that's like basically the exam, right? That people take in order to basically get through the selections in the first place.
Okay, so one misconception that a lot of people actually had was that K3M is the ultimate gateway to ICHO. But I think that according to my very own personal experience, right, that is not always the case. There are people who got like high distinction in K3M, but they actually didn't get into the training program. And only the top scorers will get invited to the training program. And the top scorers, more often than not, is only like 10 people, like for both advanced level and junior level. So it is, the slots are extremely limited. And in the training program that's conducted by UM in this year and the previous year, the majority of students actually came from the selection of the high schools themselves. So that the high schools will select a few individuals to represent the school and participate in the Chemistry Olympiad training program. So it directly bypassed the K3M route. So K3M is one of the gateways, but it's not the most important one. So if you really intend to pursue ICHO in the future, what I would strongly recommend is try to get as good as a result in K3M as possible. If not, you really have to rely on the relationship of your school with the ministry to get you into the training.
Oh, dang.
That is why.
That sounds like there's a huge drama right there.
Yeah.
Kind of dialing back a bit. So, would you share a little bit about like what your early life was like where you went to school? Where are you from originally? I think that you're from KL, right?
Yeah. So I'm actually from somewhere called Senang in Senang. Yeah. And very nice place. It's like a kampung baru, so like a village. Yeah.
Hashtag vibe.
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't living in village. It's like more of a residential area. But anyways, my schooling was actually like my secondary school and so-called my high school is actually in Kuan Cheng High School. Yeah, and I consider that as like probably one of the best schools in Kuala Lumpur or even Malaysia. And since it is a Chinese independent school, right? So a lot of things that are being exposed to me since I was like 13 years old, 14 years old is that I have to study a lot of subjects. So like the content is really massive and sometimes it's quite hard to follow. And especially given that it is a Chinese independent school, right? So the competition is like very fierce. And my first and second year in my high school was actually, I didn't perform that well. So I was actually in the second class. But like in my third year, I advanced to the first class.
I know what I want to do.
Suddenly I advanced to the first class.
Wow.
Right, yeah, so
what was motivating
it was
you?
I mean, it's just like studying, you know, like you study very hard just to be able to get to the top spot. That's the main motivation back then because like, you know, I just want to get as the best of myself. Yeah, that was the general idea behind how I succeed.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of times people like manage to achieve great things only because like they have like some sort of like spark or like some sort of motivation that kind of like pushes them forward. Do you feel like that was like a spark for you? Like at some point that just made you decide, you know what, like we have to sit down and then just do what's necessary.
I think it comes back to one of the old sayings of the Chinese. It's like failure is the success of, it's the mother of success.
Failure is the mother of success.
Yeah, failure is the mother of success. So in my first year of my high school, when I look at my report card, it's like I got like 70 something for my average, and I thought I have to do something to improve that. So what I did was that I actually studied very hard, and I eventually got an average of like 80 plus, and that's how I actually got to the first class. But to be honest, later on in my life, right, I realized that result is actually not that important. So what defines you is not the marks on the report card. It's actually how much you know about your surroundings, you know, how much you are inspired by your surroundings. So eventually I was kind of lost, to be honest. After I got to the first class, I was kind of lost in the journey because I didn't know what to pursue, I didn't know what interests me the most, and I just studied like everyone else, and I got a result, average in the first class, maybe, and it is actually not that good, to be honest. Like, for once, and plus my family was, I was having some family issues back then, so everything is kind of lost. But I think what actually saved me, right, is the pandemic. So during the pandemic, it's like you have a lot of time to really figure out what you want to do with your life or what you want to do with your eventual career. And of course, I didn't think much about back then, so I just tried my best to learn as many things as I could, right? I learned things from, you know, physics, from biology, from chemistry, or even economics.
So let's dial in then on chemistry. Is there a reason that resonated?
Right. So when I was in my Form 5, right, which is the 5th year of my study in my high school, there's this chemistry teacher who, you know, she didn't really teach that much. So her way of teaching is really not that good. Like the quality is not there, to be honest.
I'm sorry, teacher.
I paid for it and the quality is not there.
Wow, you
so I have to study on myself, right? And when you study on your own, is when you realize there are a lot of things that you can explore. You know, it's like you are trying to explore and, you know, adventure into a world of forest that you have never been.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah, so that's how I actually came to contact with like higher level concepts in chemistry. Because what I believe is that when I'm learning science, right, I have to always seek for the ultimate reason. So let's say if I learn this concept, why is this correct? Why is the other concept not correct? So I always have this know why, you know, this curiosity in mind. So that's how I actually got into a lot of higher level concepts in chemistry. And I actually did that for physics and biology as well. But eventually, I felt like chemistry is a more suitable path for me.
Interesting. Wow. Huh. So then, did that kind of naturally lead to like chemistry Olympiad?
So initially, I wasn't planning for Olympiad at all because it sounds like a very distant thing to me. The closest Olympiad that I've ever heard of is actually International Mathematics Olympiad. Like, because I had a classmate by the name of Tristan, he's in MIT now. So like he actually participated in the competition ever since 2018. So that was the only Olympiad I've ever heard of. But in 2020, right, one of my friends actually recommended me International Chemistry Olympiad. And he said that the pathway to get into it is by quiz schema to Malaysia, the National Chemistry Quiz. Yeah, so I think that's how I eventually settled on the idea of wanting to pursue a chemistry Olympiad. And I think my journey actually started in 2020. I failed to get into the team in 2021 because again there was some, I'll say there was some problems with the selection also. Yeah, and in 2022 I got in, 2023 also got. So that's how everything came.
Then I guess like, what was that experience like? You know, like representing Malaysia and trying to essentially compete on that level.
So representing Malaysia itself is quite on its own. I think it's something that everyone, if they get the chance, they'll definitely remember it for the rest of their life. Very memorable. But to be standing on the international stage and representing your country is actually a very heavy burden. And I actually felt that a lot because in these years, right, I'm the only person who has participated in ICHO before because I participated in the 2022 one. So I'll say the anticipation by the Ministry of Education and my college, is actually quite high. And I actually felt that a lot. The pressure was quite high. So I definitely cannot get the bronze medal again. That's something that is fortunate because they poured in so many resources for me, right? So I know I couldn't just let them down.
So many resources.
Yes,
you mean like
they actually sponsored.
Oh, I see.
They sponsored us.
Is it like every single day that you're that you're in the school, then they feed you like basically like I don't know like wagyu stuff?
Oh, not like kind of thing. But in fact, right, they actually posted a lot of my stories on their Instagram for Methodist College Kuala Lumpur. They posted a lot of
Methodist College
posts about me.
Okay,
So the CEO of MCKL even hosted a tea session with me. So it was like a very, very huge thing in MCKL back then, and the pressure was like so high.
MCKL friends, if you want to have like a tea session hosted for you, then get into ICHO.
yeah, that's probably one of the ways. But anyways, so that's how I think that there are a lot of pressures, and of course I studied very hard for it. But I think there are limits as to how much I can achieve without a mentor. Because in this year, there's no specific trainer, not for the practicals, not for the theoretical. So for me, to be honest, I think my capability can only take me that far. So silver is the best I can do.
So like no matter what, somehow or another, you still have to have that infrastructure, administrative and like mentorship wise to make it so that you can actually succeed in the best possible way.
I think mentor in particular is actually a very important thing because if you don't have a suitable mentor, right, then you'll be taking decisions that are wrong, and you'll be doing the things that are considered as unnecessary. Because in the preparation of Olympiad, right, there are just so many concepts, so many contents to learn, right? So which one should you focus on? And are there any techniques to approach certain problems or whatnot? So those are the things that the textbooks won't tell you. The textbooks will only tell you the core concept. Yeah, so these are the things that should be taught by the mentor. But given that we don't have a mentor this year, so like that is.
I guess you can be mentor then. Chemistry with joy.
Yeah, that's why I put in my Instagram. Right. But anyways, there's a possibility that I'll be part of the training team for next year's chemistry Olympiad.
So I guess like when you think about your experience right now, right, at US, so how do you feel that some of your experiences, academically speaking or otherwise, right, compared to what you experienced in Malaysia?
Okay, so since we are talking about university, right, so I'll just compare it to the universities here locally. Specifically University of Malaya, considered as the best university in Malaysia, of course. And to provide a bit of context, right, I've done my research internship in UM before, and it was about 2 months. I was researching on potential usage of bio-based material for some daily life products, like surfactants, and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, like basically carbohydrates are factors.
Yes,
right?
carbohydrates are factors. Yeah, that's basically the main thing that I was researching on. So I'm going to break this down into 3 different parts. Number 1 is facility. So the facilities in NUS is obviously much better than UM. In fact, right, the teaching lab of NUS is better equipped than a postgraduate lab in UM. That was what I observed. And in fact, I think this is quite a problem for the graduates in Malaysia because you don't have a rightly established infrastructure for your researchers, for your intellectuals to work on. Then how are you going to produce credible results in your research? How are you going to tell the world that we are actually doing good research? We are producing like new products for the world or not. So this is actually something that I'm pretty concerned of. Yeah. Number 1 is facility. Number 2 is the quality of the lecturers. Not to say that the quality of lecturers in UM is not good, but to be honest, it's not on par with the international standard, I would say. Because a lot of times, right, although the professors or the lecturers in UM, they did get like high degrees, they got good degrees or PhD from overseas, so it's like very credible, it's good. But the thing is that, are they capable of teaching the students here in the same way that they got their education in the US or UK?
Because there's a huge difference, right? Like just because you know something, it doesn't necessarily mean you can complete.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. So I think I'm not sure what went wrong here, but there's a distinct difference. Like for instance, in here, right, the local universities here, they still focus on direct knowledge transmission, like what they did back in middle school, high school, or even primary school, right? Just direct knowledge transmission. I tell you that this is A, this is B, and you just write it in the exam.
Can you compare that maybe to what you experienced in Singapore?
In Singapore, however, what we got is teachers who are trying to make you more curious. They actually spark your curiosity by asking you a lot of questions. And in fact, majority of the session in the lectures, right, are answering the questions by the professor.
I see.
Given by professors. Like for instance, they have something called the poev.com. Like how they'll just post a question there and you'll answer it on your own. And that's how you actually learn, right? So by making mistakes, like during the lecture, you actually learn that okay, so this concept that I had initially was actually wrong. So now this new concept that I learned is correct. Why? Because of this and that. So it's actually very different. And another aspect of how education in Singapore is actually different from Malaysia is that in Singapore, right, they don't focus on memorizing and writing it out on exam. They focus more on not just understanding a concept, but actually able to use your concept in your daily life. Use the concept that you have learned in class in your daily life.
Okay. Let's start that. Tell me about a chemistry concept that you learned recently that you use in your daily life.
Okay, so in fact, right, what I have learned right now is actually, to be honest, like more on a theoretical side of things. But if you really want to talk about like something that can be used in daily life, right, perhaps it's about molecules. So different molecules, they have like, even though they have the same chemical formula, but because of their 3-dimensional shape difference, even if just on one carbon, right, it can make a lot of difference in your body. So this is something that I think is like keep being emphasized on my lectures, and I think it's actually very important because like when you're doing pharmaceutical drugs, right, not just the structural formula is very important, but the 3-dimensional structure is also a key.
It's like they call it like
aspect.
chirality. Right?
Yeah, they call it chirality. Chirality. And this is something that is repeatedly stressed out in my lectures. Yeah, so I think it's like a very useful thing to learn.
Interesting, cool. Yeah, so like I think what you're talking about is like the whole idea of like guided discovery and then like finding things that are like relevant to your life. Right? Interesting. Wow. Okay, that's cool. But what led you to decide like I want to go to Singapore in the first place?
I think there are 3 reasons. So the first one is actually Singapore has better education. Like, to be honest, if you just look at QS World ranking, right, you'll realize that NUS is like on the 9th place, like across the entire globe. whereas UM is around 50 something, if I'm not mistaken, or 60 something. I think they have dropped recently. But given that Singapore is like highly established in their mathematical and science education, I believe that to anyone who is planning to pursue a degree in science, if you can go to Singapore, please go to Singapore, because that's like the best place probably in Asia to get your science or mathematical degree.
So, I just like, what led you to choose between, like, say, Singapore, the US, and other places?
Okay, one of the reasons is because US is actually too far away from me. So what I thought is that maybe I will not be as accustomed to the lifestyles there. So that was like one of the minor concerns. But the major concern that I had is actually like financial things. I know US universities do provide financial aid, but since you know the exchange rate is like 4.7, and my family itself is, to be honest, not rich at all. So I don't want to burden my family any further. And I know that the benefits that are provided by ASEAN Scholarship is much better than what is provided in US. So ultimately, I chose Singapore.
But are there certain people that you think about in Malaysia who inspire you or like maybe help you?
Yeah, definitely there are.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about one specific individual. I can just mention the name. His name is Dr. Thorsten. He's a German. He came to Malaysia to teach in University of Malaysia, and his specialization is actually in the field of carbohydrate chemistry, and that's where I did my internship. So I actually did my internship under him for about 2 months, and I feel like I've learned more in that 2 months than I've learned in the past 2 years. Because chemistry on paper and chemistry in real life is just two different. They are two different, and one of the major differences, right, is that in real life, you have to know how to operate with all of those apparatus and those, mechanical appliances. But on paper, right, everything is just perfect. You just set it on 80 degrees, you flask and done. But in real life, it's not. A lot of things can go wrong, and you have to keep tests. You have to conduct regular testing on your reactants and stuff, to ensure that it's actually pure and there's no side reaction that's ongoing. So chemistry in real life, in industrial or in lab, is too different from those on paper, and that's why I think that I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot under him. Yeah, and he actually inspired me a lot because he's that kind of person who, like the Western construct of education is like more towards keep asking the question why, curiosity, and he's those kind of teachers who I would consider as less conventional in Malaysia because he doesn't provide me with the information ready. He will say that, okay, if we are facing this problem, what should we do? And he will try to ask me to figure out how to solve different problems. Like, for example, if the reactant is not pure, then how should we, maybe change the reaction step a bit to make it so that the final product is actually not contaminated. Like how do we separate the reactants from the products, etc. So these are the things that you will not consider in the textbook because the textbook will not list out these kind of things. But in real life, you have to consider every single step. So I think I really learned a lot under him, and it's like heavily inspired by him.
I see. Wow. Thank you for that. Yeah. I guess like when you think about Malaysia and Singapore, if you were to compare these two nations, I guess like what are your thoughts on them? Like in the broader sense of the word, you could think about that like maybe academically, socially, politically, or otherwise.
Oh, that's a very interesting question. It's a very broad thing.
Very broad, yeah.
But maybe I'll narrow down on the education side of it.
Sure.
So in Malaysia, in fact, I just looked through the budget that's allocated in the 2024 Malaysia Belanjawan for education side, right?
Yeah.
I'll say that the spending on education in Malaysia and Singapore, both of them are quite a huge amount, quite a lump sum, in fact. But what sets them apart is that Singapore actually focuses a lot on improving the education, including the curriculum as well as the infrastructure. Whereas in Malaysia, right, we are too heavily focused on improving the infrastructure. So oftentimes, right, if you look at how the education budget is being broken down, you'll see that this amount will be going into fixing the toilets, or repainting the walls, or building new schools, this kind of things. Or maybe buying laptops for their students or whatnot. But in Singapore, right, you see a totally different story. They'll talk about, okay, increasing the benefits of teachers, or maybe they'll restructure the curriculum, conduct research on better ways of teaching and learning. So this is what Singapore is doing versus what Malaysia is doing. And as you know, right, National University of Singapore used to be, a branch of University of Malaysia, like right before initially.
Right.
Right
And it
before
was Royal Mahathir study as well.
Yes, it's Royal Mahathir study. So to see that how both of them grew from roughly around the same to such a huge difference tells us a lot about the difference in education system between them and us, right? So the education system in Singapore is heavily focused on learning science and mathematics, although it's still focused on knowledge transmission. It's the same as Malaysia. Malaysia also focuses a lot on knowledge transmission, but at least the things that they are learning is more useful than us. We have to spend a lot of time learning, like, pendidikan moral, or
I remember those days.
Yeah, right.
I remain traumatized.
Yeah, exactly.
Joyton harus mengamalkan sikap amanah yang dapat menimbulkan kepercayaan dan
Yes, that's what we are forced to learn.
Trauma, yes.
Whereas in Singapore, what they did is that they have something called general education. So in a sense, they are trying to broaden your view by looking at issues around the world and writing essays about it.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Really, right?
Not just on the ground of knowledge, but also our perspective, our views, our opinions. So this is what set them apart from us. And to be honest, right, I'm actually a fan of national service. I think that every man should go through national service. And I think Singapore's system, right, with the national service system, although it's 2 years, I think it's kind of long. It could have been shorter. But these 2 years actually trained them to be like very tough, resilient. Unlike us, a lot of like Malaysians here, to be
and won't
honest.
get taken over by people randomly threatening to stop selling water from Johor.
yeah. Maybe that's one of the reasons, yeah. But yeah, in Malaysia, I think we should have that kind of discipline as well, which I see is lacking in a lot of Malaysians.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Well, I guess, do you have some advice maybe to students maybe who are interested in going on a path that is similar to the one that you did?
Right. So my advice is follow whatever your heart says. If you are doing something that you like, just go for it and try your best on it. Make sure that you get the best out of you to achieve what you intentionally wanting to pursue. Don't just say that, okay, because this particular course enables me to earn a lot of money, so that I will choose to study this course. I don't think money should be the reason for you to study a particular course. It should be your personal passion, your personal interest, right? And I see this in a lot of youth nowadays, because they'll say that, oh, computer science is a good course, right? Everyone is talking about AI, so I should be taking computer science. But what they fail to realize is that computer science is built on the basis that it will be supporting all other industries, be it manufacturing industries, medical, finance, or whatnot. So at the end of the day, right, yes, although computer science offers you a lot of opportunity, but other fields of sciences are also growing, or other fields of engineering, or even economics, they are also growing, they are also evolving. So there are also a lot of opportunities that are appearing now, like, which we can't see for now. Yeah. But
You don't know what you don't know, right?
yeah, you don't know what you don't know, because who would have predicted iPhone 50 years ago? That's the thing. That's the thing. So a lot of people, they just choose to follow whatever their parents advise them to study, which I think is not a wise choice. So I think when you are young, find something that you love, go for it.
I see. Incredible. Thank you for that inspirational sharing. Well, I guess, where do you see your education taking you personally in the future?
Right. So in the future, to be honest, I think
you have the whole LinkedIn thing.
Right.
A student who intends to pursue a career in
exactly.
chemistry.
So what I'm aiming to become is something like an industrial chemist. Basically, what they did is that they are going to develop like new products, doing some quality control at times. Yeah. So these are the basic jobs of industrial chemists. But I hope that I'll be more on the innovation side of things, rather than doing like repetitive work. Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
So another thing that maybe I'll consider is like pursuing a career in the academic side, because I do find a sense of satisfaction when I'm teaching people. And in fact, I actually had my own tuition service before.
Chemistry with joy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's actually it's a wonderful experience. And in fact, I think that you learn more when you are teaching than you are studying. That's definitely one thing.
That's absolutely true. Okay, cool. Well, do you have any last things that you'd like to share with the audience?
Right. So I think that for Malaysians, right, particularly at this day of age, given the level of education that we are actually experiencing in Malaysia, it's not that good. So what I will recommend to all Malaysians, all youth Malaysians, is that study as much as possible. Like learn as many things as possible. If you have a smartphone, right, you can just easily download Duolingo to learn another language, or you can download Khan Academy to learn about higher level science concepts, or you can download anything like Brilliant. Like there are so many resources online waiting for you to get, and it's not that expensive. If you have the time to go pavilion and go shopping, right, why don't you spend more money on your personal education? Spend more money on your future, right?
Spoken as a true Olympiad winner.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Oh my God.
that's my personal thinking. Yeah,
Okay.
my personal opinion.
Thank you so
May
much,
not be
Joyton.
acceptable for everyone.
Thank you so much, Joyton. Really
Right.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.